Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. My name is Sarah Elizabeth Harrigan, certified life coach, and this is video 3 in the Doing Me series entitled Operating as You in Integrity. So what does that mean? Let's get into it. So the 3 things that we're going to cover in today's video: number 1, being your word and being in integrity; number 2, declaring possibility over your life; and lastly, becoming you always, understanding that you're always growing and evolving. So let's jump into number 1. What does it mean to be in integrity? What does that mean? Integrity means living in a state of mind that you are whole, perfect, and complete in who you are as a human being. Now, there's different aspects to integrity, and number 1 is keeping your word. So when we think about integrity and keeping your word, I think we've all heard before that you are nothing more than your word. I can only take you as much as I can take your word. So what we want to learn how to do in operating as ourselves and in integrity is to do what we said we would do and doing it on time, okay? Secondly, doing what you know you should do and doing it as it was meant to be done and doing it on time. Thirdly, is doing what others would expect you to do, even if you haven't made clear that you would do it, and doing it on time. So we're just going to take a little pause right here, and I'm going to just say that this part of doing me is difficult. And the reason why I would say it's difficult is because we're so trained to do things that are always for our benefit, and we don't learn that actually speaking up when things aren't going the way they should be going or the way we wanted it to go is also in our benefit. It actually supports us. So what I shared in the previous videos, I was told to be silent more so. Even though I was raised as a quote-unquote leader, I was always told to don't talk so much, you don't know enough, etc., etc. And what that would do for me in terms of my integrity is I would just keep my mouth shut when things weren't going the way it was supposed to go. I wouldn't say anything, and then things would blow up in my face. Not fun, okay? And what I have subsequently learned is that when I operate in integrity, which means speaking up when things are going well, speaking up when things are going left, speaking up when things are going south, making sure that I'm always in communication allows me to create a new plan to move forward. It also allows the other person in the situation to speak up for themselves and let me know what works for them and let me know what's in their best interest, because at the end of the day, as much as we are doing us, we also have to realize that in doing us, we still have to operate with other people, and the best way to do that is to operate in integrity, to be open in our communication, and to keep our word, most importantly, okay? So again, the 3 aspects of integrity are: 1, keeping your word, meaning doing what you said you would do and doing it on time; doing what you know you should do and doing it as it's meant to be done and doing it on time; and doing what others would expect you to do, even if you haven't made clear that you would do it, and doing it on time. So a great and powerful part of keeping your word is actually learning that you can honor your word. So if you are up to big things in the world, which I believe if you have been following this series and following my channel, there are amazing things that you want to accomplish in your lifetime. However, the reality is that when we're up to big things, there's going to be a lot of chances for disappointment, because when you're doing a lot, there's a higher chance of you dropping the ball somewhere else. So in being our word, we get to also honor our word. And what does it mean to honor your word? Honoring your word means as soon as you become aware that you will not be able to keep your initial word, you can communicate. So number 1, that means acknowledging that you will not be able to keep the word that you initially give. That's okay. I've realized that that is okay. I've had to learn that for myself, that that is okay. Sometimes things won't go exactly as planned. Sometimes you won't be able to deliver the proposal right when you said you would. However, it is beneficial for both you and the other parties involved if you make that clear. you can now say, all right, I need another day. And they can say, okay, if you need another day, we can push off whatever we were going to do with this thing for another day as well and make it work for both parties. So number one in honoring your word is acknowledging that you will not be keeping your word. Number two is acknowledging that you will keep your new word in the future. By when will you keep your word, or that you will not be keeping your word at all? And then lastly, what will you do about the impact on others of not keeping your word? So an example of this is let's say one of my clients, I said that I would get their post-coaching communication to them by the end of the day. Sometimes what happens is I am so overwhelmed. Maybe I'm working on another project. Maybe I have some pop-up clients show up and I have to deal with them first. What I can do and what I have learned to practice is let my client know, hey, I said I would get it to you by 5 p.m. Most likely you will get it first thing in the morning. So now that I have said that, they know that, okay, I'll have to wait a few more hours. However, I know that it's coming. Or maybe I can't get it to them that week at all and it won't come till next week. However, what I want you to see here is that when we allow ourselves to share that we can't keep our initial word, in honoring our word, we're still keeping our word. However, the dynamics of that word or the context or the way that it was initially going to be provided have changed. So maybe I can't do it by Monday, but I can do it by Friday. If Friday doesn't work for you, maybe you need it by Thursday. We have to compromise. However, in honoring our word, we put ourselves and the other parties involved in the best position possible. So number one in operating as you, as the most powerful version of you in integrity, is being your word. Understanding that being your word means keeping your word, and if you can't keep your word, you can honor your word. And the impact of that is tremendous on all aspects of your life, because now you learn, and this is something that I am learning and I'm every day growing in this, is in honoring my word. It is a version of keeping my word, and it keeps me in communication. It keeps me in the flow of life. It allows things to manifest naturally versus not saying anything at all and then feeling like I'm hitting up in a wall, feeling like I'm failing, or feeling like I'm disappointing someone, when all of those feelings are disempowering. And at the beginning of it all, I have the power to honor my word. I have the power to determine how it's going to look. Even if that means going from a Monday to a Friday to a Thursday, which actually works for everyone. At the end of the day, by me saying something, that is what makes the difference. So as we learn ourselves and we learn to operate as ourselves, as our truest selves in integrity, the number one thing that is going to support us in that is keeping our word and honoring our word when we cannot keep our initial promise. All right? So number two is declaring possibility over our lives. So in the previous video, we spoke about some of the things that we have to unlearn, some of the things that were inherited from other people. And a lot of the times, what has been inherited either as a defense mechanism or inherited as someone else's way of being is who we can be in the matter, who we are as a possibility. And what I mean by that is sometimes we just operate based on, okay, well, I know this feeling and I'm just going to go with it, versus looking at the reality and determining what is the best way of being that will create the result that I truly want. Now, for example, when I think of romantic relationships or getting to know someone, right? Something that I used to do in the past is I would let shit slide. I would let people do things that didn't work for me because I didn't want to ruffle the feathers. I didn't want to make it seem like I was complicated or I was asking for too much. And when I did that versus choosing in the moment to speak up for myself, it actually put me in a worse position, right? So that person got to do whatever they wanted, and then I would be left feeling unfulfilled, versus declaring for myself what was necessary from me in the moment. So a very good example of this is when I first did some transformational work at Momentum Education. It was the first weekend of our leadership training. So I go up to the front of the room, and the guy instructing the week asked, he was like, so what are some of the results that you want from this course? And I was like, well, I want to be in a relationship. I'm trying to get married. I want some kid, all the whole nine, big house on the hill, all of that. And his question for me was, got it. So are you an independent woman? And I was like, hell yeah, I'm independent. I don't need nobody. I could do it all myself. And then he stopped me and he said, being in a relationship is going to require you to be dependent. You cannot show up in a relationship and be independent. And I sat and I was like, what? I thought I had to be an independent boss ass. No, that doesn't work. And he goes, when you are on your own, that is the perfect way to be. Independent, lead your life, take care of yourself. However, the moment that you choose you want to be in a relationship with someone else, you now have to incur some vulnerability. You now have to choose what is best for that specific situation. So although I was independent everywhere else in my life, when it comes to an actual relationship of any sort, I now have to learn to be dependent, because in order for a relationship to thrive, both persons have to be dependent, right? We have to be able to say, you know what, I actually want your feedback on this, or I don't want to go through this by myself, so now I have to be vulnerable and open myself up for your help and your support. And when I realized that, I said, okay, so I have a choice in the matter and how I show up, and he said yes. Now, in subsequent trainings, I learned the power of declaration, right? And in declaring you, which is having a say in the matter, which means instead of always going to your default mode, you can actually assess the reality and determine what is needed right now for this to go in the best way possible, for this to create the result that I'm looking for. Who do I need to be? What say do I need to have in the matter? And that means declaring yourself. That means saying, or we can also use affirmations, I am XYZ. So my contract, or 3 words that I have declared over my life, is that I am a powerful, connected, and vulnerable leader. Okay? So that basically means that depending on the situation, I have to say, I am vulnerable. I am vulnerable. And when I affirm myself in that and I declare myself that way, then I'm allowed to share aspects of myself that I would have been embarrassed about before, maybe that I think were gross or too much information. But in understanding and choosing that I am vulnerable, I know that in me sharing these things, it will make a difference. And I now remove all of that egotistical thought about embarrassment and realize that the more I share, it helps other people. Another example of I am is I am grace, right? And when I say I am grace, it means that I have grace for myself, right? I am now slowing down and allowing myself to grow and evolve because I am grace. And when I am grace, I go into the world and I am graceful with other people. I allow other people to fuck up and to have mistakes because I understand that we all are living life. We all have ups and downs. We all have things we're going through. And in being grace, right? Because anything that we declare, we are now being that thing, right? So I am vulnerable, which means I'm being vulnerable. I am grace, which means I am being grace. I am being graceful. It is now allowing other people to grow and evolve the same way that I am allowing myself to grow and evolve. Another one is I am love. I love this one. I love to sign my emails. I am love, I am light, because when I choose I am love, I am now in the world being loving. Now, we all have a different definition of how we actually execute these things. However, when you declare that over yourself, right, you are now being that thing. If you're in an argument and you can see it getting very heated, and you know that internally who you are and showing up as yourself in integrity is that you're not combative, you're not interested in arguing, you're not interested in going back and forth with people. You can now say, I am understanding. And now that you have declared who you are being in that specific situation, you can now be understanding. So instead of making assumptions and cutting people off, you listen to them. And you really try to get into their world. You try to get in their shoes and understand where they're coming from versus wanting to be right and wanting to have an argument with them. You have chosen to be understanding. And that is the power in declaring you. That is the power in affirmation, right? What happens in affirmation and affirming yourself is you are declaring who you are being. And we have the power to declare ourselves in every situation. Versus what we're trained to do is, this is who you are, you're an independent woman, you should always be independent, and you apply that to every situation until you realize that being independent does not work in every situation. Being hardened does not work in every situation. Being combative does not work in every situation. So when you are operating as you in integrity, a very great supportive point is understanding that you can declare who you want to be for that specific situation in order to have the best outcome for your life. Now, I use this all the time. Most importantly, I use it in relationships where maybe I'm talking to someone that does like to argue. And who I am for myself and being myself in integrity is not arguing. I like my peace of mind. I like my chill, upbeat, loving, fun attitude. And in order to maintain that, a lot of the times I have to declare for myself that in this moment, I am going to be love, and they can go on with all their rah, rah, rah noise. But because I am declaring that I am love and I am understanding, I am going to be love and understanding, and I'm not going to try to compete with their rah, rah, rah and their noise, because at the end of the day, my peace of mind is worth more. So I'd love for you to think of all of the ways that you can declare who you are in the moment, right? And really try this on, especially when things get tough. Think about the greater goal. Think about what you really want to achieve overall. And when you think of that, what ways of being do you have to be? For me, in order to be a very inspirational and motivational person, in order to speak to millions of people and make a difference, I have to be a vulnerable, I have to be powerful, I have to be a connected leader, right? I am a powerful, connected, and vulnerable leader. And what that creates for me, I realize, is, especially when I'm coaching my clients, is in me being vulnerable and opening up the areas where I have had to grow through, it allows them to see that I'm also human. Yes, I am a coach, but I'm a coach that needs a coach, because even as a coach, I can't coach myself all the time. Sometimes I can't see my blind spots, right? As a coach, I can see yours very clearly, but I can't always see mine. So in being vulnerable and open and honest with my clients, I let them know that I also work with a coach. I'm also growing in different facets of my life. However, in this moment, I can see what works for you. I can see and feel what's changing, what's going on with you. However, I had to learn that I also have to be vulnerable. I can't just show up thinking I'm perfect, because then my clients think I'm perfect, and that's not the reality. And they also think that they have to be perfect, and that's not the reality. We're allowed to have things happen in our lives. We're allowed to go through things. However, in declaring who we are, we make a difference. We have a say in the matter of how we show up in the world. So, number 2, in operating as you in integrity, is understanding that you have a choice in the matter. You have a say in the matter of who you are in the moment. You can choose and declare who you want to be for any given moment. I'm sure as a mother, sometimes you're going to have to declare, I am defensive because you ain't going to F with my child. Sometimes that's necessary. And at other times you have to say, I am understanding, because you want your child to be able to open up to you and speak to you. And instead of being the, I've been there before, I'm going to tell you what to do because it's best, you choose to be understanding because your child just wants you to listen. Right? So we have the power to declare who we want to be in any given moment. And that's number 2 in operating as you in integrity. Now, lastly, is becoming you. And what that means is when you understand that you are always growing, you are always learning, you are always expanding, you now have a different type of grace for yourself. And you also get to request that grace from other people, right? So what I've realized in life is that we over time determine how people are, right? So we experience them in one facet, and we just think that that's how they're going to be for all of their lives. I've always been the fat girl. I've always been the girl that likes to eat. I do love to eat, actually. However, that doesn't mean that in 20 years, maybe I won't have an appetite like that anymore and I'll stop eating the things that I used to eat. Like, we are always evolving, we are always expanding, we're always learning new things and gathering more information and experiencing new people. And every time we do that, it actually adds something to us, or maybe it eliminates a way of being that we used to be. So the first thing that we need to do in terms of, the third thing that we need to do in terms of operating as ourselves in integrity, operating as you in integrity, is to understand that you are always in a phase of becoming. There is no final spot where you're going to get to and everything is just going to be cool. That's not how life works at all. So when we stop believing that we are going to get to this final endpoint and understand that we are actually on a journey, and throughout that entire journey we're growing and expanding and learning and glowing, then we get to have a significant amount of grace for ourselves, a significant amount of gratitude for ourselves and for others. And it is very supportive in us operating in integrity. So yesterday that may have worked for me. Today it still works. Maybe a year from now, I would have went through some things in life. I may have met some new people. I have learned some new things. And that way of operating doesn't work for me anymore, right? I think we always hear that people say, when I was 25, these kind of things got me excited. Now that I'm 35, I don't want nothing to do with that. Right? It's kind of like when I graduated from college, I loved to club, I loved to party, I used to drink, all of that stuff. And then I stopped because I had no interest in it. I didn't want to be in the club every night. I didn't want to be in the club because my feet hurt. And people were stinking there and they smoking. And I don't want to do that. I wanted to be home working on my website. I wanted to be home recording a YouTube video. I wanted to be home watching something on Netflix that interested me. So over time, our interests change. The things that we like change, which means that who we are also evolves. And in order to operate in integrity, operate as you have to understand that you are always becoming, you are always expanding, and it is the most beautiful thing ever. I have never wanted to be the same person for my entire life. Like, inside of me, yes, I'm always caring. I love speaking. I love food. Those kind of things are probably never going to change. However, how I operate in the world, operating in integrity, it will change because I'm always watching new TED Talks and I'm always watching things on Revolt TV, and YouTube is my favorite place. So as I learn new things, it eliminates what used to work, and now I get to input things that do work. Okay, so to recap this video on operating as you in integrity, number 1 is being your word, which means keeping your word and honoring your word when you can't keep your initial promise. Number 2 is declaring possibility, having a say in the matter, choosing how you want to show up in the moment, right? Me being independent does not work if I want to be in a successful romantic relationship. Me being independent does not work if I want to be in a successful partnership or business relationship either, because I have to rely on the other person for everything that they bring to the situation. So I have had to learn that independence does not work in every situation. And the minute that I realized I had a choice, I was able to declare who I wanted to be in different situations. And number 3 is having that grace and gratitude for yourself, that you are always in a state of becoming your best self. You're always experiencing new things, learning new things, and those things have an impact on who you are and who you are in the world. And understanding that allows you to develop in a much more powerful way. Okay? So I hope this video made a difference for you. This is video number 3 in the Doing Me series. And this video is entitled Operating as You in Integrity. And yes, it is challenging because what we know and what we've always known feels good. However, who we are becoming is even better. All right, so please take the time out to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and make sure the people that you love are getting access to this content so they can make a difference in their lives. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.